Hello and welcome back to TVC22's federal election coverage from Glengarry-Prescott-Russell. Based in Clarence, Rockland here, we have been making our way around and meeting all of the different candidates here to give you both the power and knowledge that you need to make the right choice for yourself and your family and community come the 20th of September. And today I have the absolute pleasure of announcing that the NDP candidate, Konstantine Malakos, is with me. So how are you, Konstantine?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us. We've got an absolute ton to get through and can't even squeeze half of it in such a small interview. So I think the best place for us to start really is to let the people who might not know you in the community know a little bit about you, where you're from, and what would some of your priorities be for Glengarry-Prescott-Russell if you were elected as MP?
For sure. So I think that when I talked about myself, I'm a working class person. I work for a large shipping company. I also work at Beau's Brewery on the weekend. I am not an economist or a lawyer or any of the other typical careers that go into politics. But I am a person who believes that we need more working class representation in our politics, and we need a government that resembles us more. A lot of people in this riding are farmers. They're tradespeople. They are hardworking individuals who don't feel seen by their government and don't feel represented by their government, and they deserve that in their government. So that's why I'm running. My priorities locally are to see people's lives get a little easier. You know, people are suffering right now. A lot of people can't find housing. If they do find housing, it's not affordable. That's not okay. So we need to build more affordable housing in this country, and we need to do it really quickly because it's a crisis. We need to prioritize our environment. As we've seen with the cement plant, nobody wants that. The environment has not been a priority here, and we need to prioritize our environment, both locally and on a global scale. The world is literally on fire. I mean, we saw forest fires in Sudbury created air advisories here in this region, and that's crazy. And we've seen floods. Like, look what happens every couple of years. We have flooding in Wendover, Rockland, and all through L'Orignal. We've seen flooding, and it's a crisis, and it needs to be dealt with as a crisis. So that's a huge deal for me as well. People are struggling with affordability in life in general. You know, daycare is out of control. They can't find a space, and if they do find a space, like, I mean, it's expensive. So we need $10 a day daycare in this country. We need to make it easier for people to get ahead, for families to get ahead, and for individuals to get ahead.
Well, let's start there with affordability, I think, because I mean that encompasses a lot of the things you touched on there. Starting with housing, your party has promised to build over 500,000 units of affordable housing if elected. But what I would like to know, especially for the people of Glengarry-Prescott-Russell, many of whom needed a house yesterday, not today or tomorrow, how long would it take? If you were elected and you put these out, how long until they're going to start seeing some of these houses pop up in the region?
Well, half of them will be built within 5 years, and that's not fast enough. That is not fast enough, and I agree that it is a crisis, but it does take time to build housing. This is years and years of inaction from conservative and liberal governments who have gotten us to this place where it's now such a crisis, and it's now where it's an on-fire crisis, and people need something in the short term. So it's going to take time. We're being transparent about the fact that it's going to take time to build these units. But in the short term, we are proposing rent subsidies. So if you are paying more than 30% of what you make in rent, economists tell us that's unaffordable. But I don't need an economist to tell me that, because I've lived that. I've paid more than 30% of what I make in rent in my life. I know it's unaffordable. I know you can't afford to save for a house or do anything else when you're paying that much in rent. So we are going to have rent subsidies in the short term to get people over that hurdle until those housing units are built.
Okay, grand. And then looking at one of the other points that you brought up there was affordability, and not just affordability, but it's availability as well that surrounds childcare. Daycares for people. It's an absolute nightmare in the region, as you well know, to be able to find not only something that's affordable, but something that's available and something that's flexible as well, that provides the kind of hours that the 21st century, the 2021 family needs, who aren't all 9 to 5. We've got many people, many families that both parents want to go to work because that is their right to. So what would you do if you were elected to be able to help with not only the affordability of daycare in the region, because you've mentioned your $10 a day one, but also the actual availability of spots?
Of course. So we are going to have to partner with the province on that, and they're going to have and we are going to have to work with them because it is under their purview. But we can do things to really encourage people to get into early childhood education. Things like eliminating interest on student loans would allow people to go back to school for early childhood education if we'd like. As new immigrants come here, especially Francophone immigrants into the community, looking for work, we can encourage them to go into that industry. We are going to have to promote the industry. We're going to have to build daycares up. And we are going to have to work with the province to do that. But eliminating barriers that people can go back to school could go a long way toward that. Because I know a lot of people who would love to go into early childhood education, who are in other jobs right now, who the idea of going back to school is just cost prohibitive to them.
And then when we talk about costs as well, especially within the household, internet and rural connectivity, whether it be your phone, whether it be your broadband, it's definitely it's a big topic. It's something that's on every household's lips, really. And some households don't even have the luxury of being able to talk about the price of it because they just can't get it at all. So if you were elected, how high up on your priority list are you going to place internet in these rural regions? And also the Liberal Party announced a $1.2 billion investment in rural internet throughout Ontario. It was announced in August of this year, and that ball is apparently rolling already. If you're elected, would you be looking to kind of squash that project and start something new, and kind of destroy that momentum already, or would you be looking to build on it?
Well, here's the thing. What the Liberals love to do is partner with private companies to do things like this. They love to give money to the telecoms like Bell and Videotron and all the other people all the other companies. But the reality is these companies are bringing in tons of revenue and are choosing not to provide internet to our rural communities. They're choosing not to prioritize our rural communities because they don't make them enough money. And so we've seen money given to them time and time again, earmarked for these types of projects, and they don't do it. So I honestly believe that we need to take the same approach we took to get a home in everybody's house. I was talking to to our critic on infrastructure, and he was telling me that back in the day, we were having a very similar conversation about getting everybody a home phone. Many, many years ago, we were talking about getting everybody a home phone. And the way that we finally did it was by the federal government building it and creating that infrastructure and doing it because the federal government was not about making money off of it. The federal government was about getting everybody that access to that technology. And then they could rent the infrastructure back to these companies, then the companies could sell the services within it. But what we're doing with the internet is that we're allowing these large companies to control the infrastructure and control when the infrastructure is built and how it's built and the speed it's built at. And that is the wrong approach. We need to be going in there and owning the infrastructure because this is vital infrastructure. It's just as vital as a highway. We're not asking a private enterprise to own our highways. We shouldn't be asking them to own our internet infrastructure either. So I really do believe that we need to do this quickly, and we need to do it as a federal government. We need to own that infrastructure.
So what do you make of the Liberal promise that by 2025, most rural homes will have internet?
Well, we can do it faster than that. We can do it faster than that, and there are funds to do it. There is a process every year. It's a fairly complicated process in which the telecoms buy access to the existing telecom infrastructure that the government owns, and it's the tune of billions of dollars every year that the government brings in from that. We're suggesting taking that money, earmarking it directly for internet infrastructure, then building that infrastructure, then continuing to sell that infrastructure back, rent that infrastructure back to these companies so that they can continue delivering internet to people.
So you mentioned that in the meantime as well, when I say you, I mean on your party's plan, it mentions that until you're able to sort of help out and make the industry more competitive, the way to reduce the price is to introduce a price cap. Obviously, the criticism on that it stops suppliers coming in and bidding for things because they can't make the money that they can make. But you think with this way around, it will sort of prevent that kind of issue, I guess?
Well, we are paying the most in internet in a country with a similar economy. We are. If you look at every other country with a similar economy to Canada, they are paying a lot less in internet than we are. That is not sustainable. That is not okay. And that is that is an absolute lack of regulation on these companies. You have to rein these companies in. Because right now there's a lack of competition. These companies are able to get away with charging exorbitant rates for internet. It's not okay. We need the price caps. People are being fleeced by these companies. The biggest problem is that these companies are lobbying our government so heavily. I mean, if you look at the lobbying reports, the Liberals took meeting after meeting with the big players in telecom. The amount of time that the Liberals have logged with with lobbyists for these companies is just mind-boggling. Many of them logged by Francis Drouin. I'm not saying all of them were logged by Drouin, but many of them were logged by him personally. And but it's not just him, it's the entire caucus is taking these meetings, meeting after meeting, and then we see nothing change for Canadians and we wonder why. Well, you just have to look at the lobbying reports, and I don't know what happens in those meetings. I wasn't in those meetings. But when you see the meetings and then you see a lack of action, it's hard not to make a connection between the two.
To move away from it slightly, we talk about the element of the difficulties of living in a rural area there, about getting connected. One of the great benefits we have is the rural area. It's the vast wetlands and grasslands that we have. And climate change is one of the big pillars that surrounds the NDP's project and proposal for this year. On the website, on your website, the NDP states that protecting our air, land, and water secures our future. If you are elected in, how do you intend on going about fulfilling that promise?
Well, first of all, my very first promise and my very first order of business, my very first fight as the MP for Glengarry-Prescott-Russell, I'm not running to be an NDP MP. I'm going to be a member of the caucus that I'll be very proud to be a part of, and I have a caucus behind me, and I'm with this party because I know that this party is going to support me in my efforts the best in terms of what I want to do for Glengarry-Prescott-Russell. And my first fight in Glengarry-Prescott-Russell is this Coliseum cement plant. I want to see that project killed. I've worked with members of my party to come up with a plan that is viable and that falls within our federal jurisdiction, and we are going to implement that plan right away. It's going to involve me going directly to the new Minister of Indigenous Affairs and asking for a meeting in the new Parliament. And in that meeting, I'm going to ask them to go into negotiations with the Kanesatake First Nation regarding the cement plant and make sure that we have their informed consent before moving forward in the spirit of UNDRIP, which we finally passed into law this year. And on that note, I do want to mention that I've been making a lot of efforts to connect with the Indigenous communities in Glengarry-Prescott-Russell, and the problem is that there is not a central body organization that I've been able to connect with, but I have been able to have conversations with several individuals in the riding, and there are people from many, many nations living in Glengarry-Prescott-Russell, and I would like to get into more conversation with them. So if any of them are listening tonight, please contact me. I would love to talk to you. I know there's not much time left, but before the election, ideally. But on that note, we need to get into that consultation. But we also have to explore what species are in the Outaouais and figure out if there is a species at risk because it's interprovincial waters. And if there is a species at risk, and I'm sure there is because we know that there will be, because we've seen that there's eagles, there's various fish species that exist in the Outaouais, that we just have to identify one, and then we can do an injunction under the Fisheries Act, which is federal jurisdiction. So when Drouin says this is not jurisdictional, he's gaslighting people. He is. He's trying to avoid responsibility for something. But we can stop the Coliseum cement plant. And I know that the Rockland audience may not be as familiar with that issue, but it's a very, very major issue for people in the riding. We also do need to look at climate change and how it's impacting our rural communities, especially around here. We're seeing flooding in Wendover, Rockland, Lorignal, and many other communities year after year after year, and it has to stop. So we need to put all of our energy behind ending climate change, and that means actually meeting targets, not just setting targets, failing to meet those targets, then setting new targets that are more aggressive before we've even met the worst targets that we haven't met yet, which seems to be what the Liberals are doing instead of actually acting on climate.
We have to keep moving on through the topics here, Konstantine. Sorry to rush us over this. But the main pillar of this election, the main talking point, let's say, of this election has to be the pandemic. We are still in it. The fourth wave has just started. So if you were elected to the region, as well as the NDP obviously being elected to our government next week, then how do you see us getting through it from here on out? And on a personal note, how do you feel about mandatory vaccines and vaccine passports?
Absolutely. So we are going to need to continue to support the small businesses in this riding by continuing the wage subsidy program, which is allowing these businesses to continue paying their employees. That's really important. We are also going to need to ensure that people are vaccinated if we want to move beyond this pandemic. So that means that things like vaccine passports make sense. They make sense. And it does mean that mandatory vaccines for government employees make sense. And we need to have a firm date by which people have those vaccines. It's important, but I don't think we should be demonizing people who don't have vaccines as anti-vaxxers or trying to paint them as some sort of conspiracy theorists or whatever, as I see a lot of very negative stuff on the internet where people are just very, very ready to demonize people. Some of these people have reasons that they're hesitant. My own mother was hesitant to get her second shot, and I had a lot of conversations with her about it. And the reality is that people don't feel like they have all the information. But you know what? The vaccines were just given full Health Canada approval. They are no longer emergency approved. They're fully approved, meaning that they've gone through the entire process. So I think that was a thing that was holding a lot of people back. So maybe some people will feel ready to get the vaccine now that they have heard that news. But we also just need to make sure that there is information out there, that science is readily available to people, that people can talk about these issues without feeling judged. And through conversations with people, we can encourage people to have vaccines. But yes, you do need to sometimes have firm rules in place too, and it's about getting us out of this pandemic together.
And talking about getting through this pandemic, one of the areas worst hit within our healthcare system has been long-term care, so long-term care centres, long-term care homes. How would you see making our healthcare system more resilient going forward? And what would you do to try and obviously help out the long-term care homes here locally as well, especially the Francophone ones, which seem to be quite underrepresented? Yeah. Underrepresented, pardon me.
So before Harper, the federal government was putting 50% of the dollars into healthcare, and the provincial government was putting 50% in. Under Harper, there were reductions made. Now the federal government's putting in 22%. Trudeau campaigned in 2015 on restoring those healthcare transfers, and he didn't do it. In 6 years, he has not done it. He made a big fuss about it in 2015, but he has done nothing about that. So yes, our healthcare system is underfunded, and we're seeing that in terms of the services people are getting from the system now. So that's the first thing we need to do. We need to expand healthcare to include dental, hearing, mental health, optometry. It needs to be true full healthcare from head to toe. That has to happen too. We also need to include prescription medications in that. But in terms of long-term care, yes, 80% of deaths at the beginning of the pandemic were in long-term care homes. Nora Loretto did some amazing journalism on this in Maclean's magazine and some other publications. And we saw that some of the conditions in these homes are just unacceptable. So, and one of the biggest reasons for that is that the main motivator for these long-term care homes is profit. These are private businesses. Rivera Chartwell, these are private businesses that are making money for shareholders in Toronto off of seniors' care and the disabled community's care. We talk about long-term care homes, we often leave out the disabled community. Many members of the disabled community are in long-term care homes, and most of them are in public homes due to the abusive systems like ODSP and CPPD, which don't give people enough money to live on and create government-enforced poverty. A lot of them end up in homes that are subpar, where they're getting terrible where there are terrible conditions. They're under-resourced homes. These homes then exist to make profit for somebody for somebody on Bay Street. They don't exist to provide care. This has to stop. We need to take profit out of long-term care. We need to take care of people. It's an insult to the people in these homes that there are cuts to their care being made so that someone on Bay Street can make another dollar. That has to stop. So that's it. That's a huge thing that needs to stop. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Mr. Malakos, we're arriving at the end. The 20 minutes do fly by. The last question I really want to ask you is, how are the NDP going to afford all of this? There is so much being spoken about, and there's always these big promises, and it's the white whale of increasing taxes. But why has no one ever done that before, and why should people trust that the NDP will be able to do that and get the money that way?
If you are the average citizen of Glengarry-Prescott-Russell, and if you are even on the higher end of the spectrum in Glengarry-Prescott-Russell, to be honest, your taxes are not going to go up 1 cent under our plan. What we are talking about doing is putting a wealth tax on wealth over $10 million. So if you have more than $10 million, yes, we're going to put a 1% tax on wealth over $10 million. But that is only going to affect people who have more than $10 million in cash or assets. Which is a very small minority of people, and not many of them are in this riding. And we are going to do that because that is the right thing to do. Canadians want it. Poll after poll shows that Canadians support a wealth tax. Drouin and the Liberals rejected the wealth tax, which is why they can't afford to do the programs they want to do, because they've prioritized their rich friends. And as long as we continue to prioritize the richest among us, no, we can't afford it. But if we stop prioritizing the richest among us getting tax cuts and subsidies, then yes, we can afford to do the things we want to do. Our platform is fully costed. The Parliamentary Budget Office has looked it over. It is doable. It is viable. There is no reason we can't move forward with our plan, and it's financially viable in every way.
Well, Mr. Malakos, I just want to give you the final word here. Can you let our viewers at home know why on the 20th of September they should go to those polls and vote NDP? Why should they go and vote Konstantine Malakos?
I absolutely can. So I believe that you deserve more from your government. You deserve a government that is ready to put you first. You deserve housing. You deserve to have money in your pockets for food. You deserve to be able to send your kids to the best schools that they want to go to if they want to go down that road. You deserve to be able to go back to school yourself if you want to go down that road. You deserve to have an environment that is clean and safe. If you are a member of the disabled community, you deserve to not be suffering under government-enforced poverty through programs like ODSP and CPPD that have not put you first. You deserve to have a guaranteed livable income of $2,200 a month as a disabled person. You deserve that. You deserve a government that is ready to fight for you and not the wealthiest among us. We all deserve that. If you're a member of an Indigenous community, you deserve clean drinking water. You deserve shelter. We all deserve these things. And we've been convinced through years and years of abuse from conservative and liberal governments that we do not deserve these things, but we do, and we deserve them now, and it is a travesty that we don't have them yet.
Mr. Malakos, thank you very much for coming down and speaking with us today. And thank you very much for watching. Make sure you do go about and check out all the other interviews we did with all the other candidates. They're available in most part in both languages as well. So go consume that content, go find the answers that you need to find so that on the 20th of September you can go and make the right choice for you. Thank you for watching, and Konstantine, thank you again for coming down.